This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first, call your parents to say I'm sorry, and then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee with your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 an order. Additional terms apply.
We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to This Song Is Yours. We're a music podcast that chats to artists, musicians and creatives on their songwriting process and their upcoming releases. We very much love that you're joining us once again, and if this is your first time, welcome to the podcast. My name is Simon Fink and this is episode 227. We apologise for the delay in episodes this week. Life did get a little bit crazy and in the way of us delivering another instalment of the pod. If this is your first time listening to us, make sure you go give us a follow on all of our socials, which are in the show notes, and a subscribe on whatever pod service you use to stay up to date with episodes. We have had some very exciting meetings as of late regarding guests for the next few months, so make sure you subscribe so you can stay up to date with all the new episodes we have coming. But let's get on to today's episode. Today's guests are those lovable lads from Kingswood. Now, anyone who's not aware, Kingswood are an alternative rock band from Melbourne, Australia, who've been winning hearts across the country for, I'd say, over 15 or 16 years now. Never one to rest on their laurels. They have a forthcoming record called Home, which is another sonic shift for the band. It sees them leaning into a bit more of a country-ish, country rock kind of sound, but it does still retain the classic Kingswood sound as well, so you don't have to worry about that. More so just opening another door for sonic evolution. Now, we had the pleasure of speaking with frontman Fergus about the forthcoming record. We also spoke about the behemoth tour that they're currently undertaking. They are on the road, and I think they've got about 70 plus dates for this tour. You'll hear us talk more about that in detail in the episode. We're talking about working with Eddie Spear, who helped them produce the record, and what the year holds for the band. So we've put all the band socials as well in the show notes, along with where you can buy tickets to said tour. You'll want to make sure that you catch on this tour. It sounds like it's an incredible kind of experience. So all the links to that will be in the show notes. We do want to give a shout out as well to Jade from Beehive for her help with this episode. But let's get into it. This is our chat with Fergus from Kingswood.
Favorite kind of void in space and time. Tell me, why should I let you go? Face the seasons on my own. Tell me, why should I let you go?
Please welcome to This Song Is Yours, Fergus Linacre from Kingswood. Fergus, hello, sir. How are we?
Hey, Simon. I'm very well. Thanks for having me and having a chat.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today and being with us. I do appreciate it. As we were discussing before we started recording, you are in a very warm area of the country at the moment, so I appreciate you spending some time with us.
No, that's all right. Yes, we're in Tamworth. It's our first ever visit to Tamworth Music Festival, because I don't think some of our previous albums, I think, fit, but it didn't make a lot of sense. However, this sort of slight shift in direction has opened the door, and they've invited us here, so we're very pleased with that. And this is where we're starting our tour, essentially.
I was going to bring up the tour a little bit later, but we might as well chat about it now. You are currently at the beginning stages, I want to say, of the Hometowns tour, which for anyone who hasn't seen the poster as of yet, Fergus, this is an extremely adventurous tour. I think it's massive looking. That if for anyone who hasn't seen the poster, it's I think 70 dates strong, and is only being billed as phase 1, which in my mind means that there's more to come.
Yeah, it is. We're gonna announce phase 2 probably at the end of Jan, and that'll bring it more up to around 100 shows. And it is a big, bold venture, but we felt like, we had enough downtime to recharge the batteries over COVID, and rather than just coming back and putting your foot in the door. And that seems to be the attitude, is that, people are tentative about doing, about touring, because there are a lot of stats and everyone's talking about that there isn't this boom where everyone's going out to see music. It is, generally 80% of what it used to be. People aren't buying tickets until the day before. So it's a confusing space to be in. There's also a lot of bands travelling and touring and internationals coming. So it's kind of a tricky time for the music industry, even though it's all opened up again. There are new challenges. And so we kind of thought about what to do. We love touring. It's one of our favourite things, and, having that taken away was, challenging, of course. I mean, I'm not going to compare challenges through COVID to different people, but certainly we were ready to come back in a big way and do something bold and adventurous. And, we sort of said, well, why don't we just do town to town and just play the local pub in as many towns around Australia as we can, so people don't have to travel into big cities to see bands, and they can just go down to their local pub. So that was the plan. And then, of course, we looked at the schedule, and we looked at hiring vans that could do it and accommodation every night, and the budget for that grew and grew, and we thought, well, we should do it in a bus because that might be cheaper. And then one of these tour buses like you have in the States or Europe didn't exist in Australia. Because cities are so far away, it doesn't really make sense. And there was one that existed that got turned into a motorhome over COVID. So then we looked at buying a bus and building it, which is what we did. And so now we own it, and a lot of bands and film crews and festivals want to rent it off us already. So when we finish this tour, it can go out and and we want bands to use it. We want it to be, its own entity and its own sort of piece of Australian music history down the track. Hopefully, her name's Peggy, and so we're still tinkering. It's hot in here at the moment because Tamworth's about 35 degrees, and we're tinkering with the aircon to get it cool in here. But it's our home for the next 6 months, and we like big, bold adventures, and this is the next one in the band's life.
I absolutely love that. I think I have seen some footage of it. I think at one point you might have named it, or I might be getting the name wrong, but that it was the Kingswood Apollo at one point.
Yeah, it was. When we bought the bus, it had Apollo written on it, and we thought, well, that's a nice name for, a bold adventure.
Yeah.
But then our original tour van, which was a Toyota Hi-Ace, was called Peggy. And we thought that we'd honour that old van and just call this one Peggy as well.
Look, I can very much appreciate that. And again, you get to, as you said, honour that previous van as well. Well, it is an incredible undertaking that you guys are that you're taking on, and it does. Again, I'll make sure we put all the details in the show notes for the podcast for people so that they can go and see when you are playing in a town near them. Because as I said, there is 70 plus dates in phase 1. But it's exciting because not only are you taking on this huge tour, but there's new music out as well for you to tour around with. I believe that there is a new album coming out from the band called Home, coming out sometime this year. Firstly, congratulations, because it is an exciting time to be releasing music, and so far the singles that we've gotten from the record are beautiful sounding. There's some fantastic kind of music coming from this record.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we talked a lot about I don't like using the word change too much, but it is certainly a different energy to this album. What happened was that when we write music, it comes from, personal experiences and stories and being out in the world and socialising, meet people, and all these sort of things happen that eventually inspire stories to write about. And that kind of in some ways dried up, and you're left with either writing about being isolated, which we weren't really interested in doing that because everyone was, writing an isolation song or something. So Al actually rang me. I was in Queensland, he was in Melbourne, and he said, I've kind of created this character who was called GC Towns, and who's not locked down, and it was a different time period, and sometimes when you try and write through a concept album or try and write through a different character, it can come out as sort of convoluted. But we found that through writing stories about this one guy and his life and his challenges and the journey that he was going on, using the feelings and stories that came from us, and putting that into this character, and we changed the language a little bit and the way we would phrase things a little bit. So it kind of ended up being a film score to a film that will never get made, about this character. And so each song travels with this guy as he faces different struggles in life. And we found it a really great way to be able to focus and write this record, which is actually 2 albums. The second half of it essentially is finished as well, so that will come out later. But it's not a rock and roll radio hits kind of driven album. Not that we always did, but it's always in the back of your mind to try and there's certain pressures from labels and all this kind of thing, and we always tried to sort of go against that. Our second record was drastically different from the first, and we did Reveries, which was basically a string and piano album, a version of Juveniles, so it was like the same album, different songs, but so we've always sort of done very different and diverse things. But it was quite freeing to have no expectations and not know what was going to happen in the world and not know what was going to happen with the music industry, and just write this conceptual album about this character. And it's really beautiful, I think. There's plenty of rock and roll. There's some big guitar moments on there. If you're a Kingswood person that loves the big guitars, there's probably more than ever. But it's a lot more soulful, I think.
From what I've heard of the singles so far, so we've got We've got Burning Holes, and I believe Good Whiskey came out last week. Yeah. And both, I would agree. I think that soul is a very kind of apt word to use, because it does seem like there is as you mentioned, they still very much sound like Kingswood. You guys aren't a totally different band, but it does, take a little bit of a sonic shift slightly. I know that for the singles, I believe you worked with Eddie Spear, who's worked with artists like Brandi Carlile and Chris Stapleton. And I'm curious kind of how that working relationship came about, or he mixed and mastered the record, sorry. And what made you go with Eddie?
Eddie's kind of our George Martin, our fifth Beatle. When we did our first record in Nashville with a producer called Vance Powell, who was doing Jack White and things like that at the time, and we loved Blunderbuss by Jack White. We were like, we want that. Whoever made that record, we want to work with them. Mm-hmm. So he made Microscopic Wars, and his assistant engineer was Eddie Spear. And we just became very close, and he's recorded or at least mixed every record we've done since. So he's always part of the conversations. He's come to Australia to work with us before. We've gone to Nashville, where he lives. He's English, but he lives in Nashville. And it's been great to see him, progress and win Grammys and all this kind of thing. When we met him as just an assistant, but we saw the talent and the vision, and he pushes us a lot. So we did make this record without him in person, and then we went over and did some things with him, and Al went over and recorded some extra musicians like the pedal steel that you hear and things like that. But yeah, it's great when he's in the room with us as well. So hopefully we can get back to that, but we were unable to do that this time. But we would record at this ranch in Queensland, and we would send him songs, and then we'd all go around in circles like we do. And him and Alex have a great working relationship, as you know, Al's kind of the producer, and they work together on other things as well. So it's a great dynamic. But yeah, he's our fifth guy.
There is something about these new songs, and I know that we kind of touched on it before to those listening, that we were having a quick chat before we started recording, that this new music is kind of taking you to audiences that you maybe previously weren't going to, i.e., as you mentioned, in Tamworth, at Tamworth Music Festival. What has the reaction been like for yourselves for this new music? And again, it's not a huge sonic shift, but it is enough that you're now going to different festivals and different kind of places. Yeah, what's the reaction been like?
Yeah, I mean, there was a slight bit of, not concern, but I guess strategizing in my mind of how we were going to play.
The most powerful designer drugs are the digital ones we use daily. And we get high off them. One touch, tap, like, scroll at a time. You know, just like tech creators want us to. Use digital without digital using you. Learn more at sync.ithra.com.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Songs off the first record and then going into songs like this, and would that just be crazy for people who are watching and be like, what is this band? And we kind of road tested that arrangement in Europe late last year, and played a vast array of songs from all different styles, and figured out the best way for them to flow into each other. And I think we were overthinking it. I think people, don't have this thought of, that one was a little bit like Creedence Clearwater, and that one's a little bit like Queens of the Stone Age, and this one's a little bit like Dolly Parton. So it's like it's not as big a shift as you think, and I think the diversity is great as well. I love seeing bands that challenge you and jump around a little bit, and it flows really well together, and it's us, so it just works that way. But yeah, to play to new audiences, it's good like that.
100%. I think there's also something to be said if you've got a band who's releasing like the same album 3, 4. Sorry, you go. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I mean AC/DC's done it, and that works, doesn't it? But we're not. We're certainly not. So I'm just going to hide this incoming video. Yeah, we're not that band, and who knows what we'll do after this. But we played at our first show the other night, and a few people were saying they'd come off, and we came off stage, and they said we were not expecting that at Tamworth Music Festival. So it's still very much us, and we've got our foot in the door with a bit of a country tinge to it. But it's certainly still a rock and roll band and a rock and roll show. But yeah, everyone loved it, and I think we kind of stand out here because of that.
100%. I think there's something to be said about a band that can, again, not just make the same record multiple times, but also can exist in many different worlds and still, from what we can see as an outsider's perspective, quintessentially still be Kingswood and yourselves, which I think is a fantastic thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, we love that. Like Al and I have talked about doing a tour, if it was appropriate, where it's just him on a piano and me, and us just singing together. And that would work. They're just songs. You can wrap them in any way you want. And we kind of did that with Reveries. And this was just the music and the style that felt like it suited this character. That whole idea I mentioned earlier of a film score to this, to this movie, and this, it was a very visual sort of undertaking. And the stories could be like, there's a family issue going on that about a will, or, and there's infighting and something like that. Now, I would never write a song about that specifically, even though it was a big, it took a lot of energy and it was frustrating and all this kind of thing. And I was losing faith in the good of people and all this kind of thing. But then when you talk about it and you change the language a little bit, you can tell the same story through this character, and get all those feelings off your chest and tell, and write about these things just in a bit of a different way. So that's kind of how it all played out together. Al and I would sit down and talk about what was going on in our lives and how we were feeling, and something we'd say would jump out, or I'd say, I've been working on this, and we'd work on it, and it all just it was very sort of flowing, quite a flowing experience, and it took a long time, because we could take a long time. We would we recorded in our studio in Melbourne, and we recorded in Nashville and on this ranch in Queensland, most of it. It wasn't like 11 till 11 studio days. It was wake up and go for a walk, and what do you want to work on? Yeah, we'll do this, and let's go for a swim. Hang on, I've got this idea, let's go back in. So it was a different experience. So it was really good. We loved it.
I do think that does sound like it's a kind of the best way to approach a project like this, in that you're able to have a little bit of I guess a lack of pressure on yourselves to be able to work on what you want to work on, and then that way what is coming out is kind of the best of what you guys can produce. I'm wondering, before you mentioned what I think is a really interesting line. You said like songs are songs, like you can tour them and have them as the full rock band, you can have them as piano and strings or whatever it may be. When it came to the songwriting of this record, but it could be, I guess, applicable to any other record, when it came to like Good Whiskey or Burning Holes, were there times where the songwriting, you kind of came up with something and that it appeared, or it, I guess, came to you, or originally started out as kind of one thing, and then playing around with it did turn into, it might have been a slower, more ballady song that turned into a rockier song, or the other way around, or if that makes sense?
Yeah, there were. Like Burning Holes actually was a song that Al wrote quite a while ago, and we knew it was good. I always thought it was, one of, if not the best songs he's ever written. But we couldn't find a place for it on. It didn't fit on Juveniles. It didn't. We just couldn't find a place for it. And we recorded a few different versions of them. We tried to make different things, and finally it found a home on this album because it suits it, because it kind of always was a sort of slightly country-esque song. And then there were songs that we wrote that didn't fit on this record. So it's not I know I said that you can wrap a song in any way you want, and you can, but it doesn't always make it the best version of itself. Mm-hmm. So there are songs that we had where we tried to go, if we did it like this and change that instrumentation, it could go on this album. So we'd work on it for a day, and then we'd sit there and be like, we're kind of selling this song short by changing its character to fit this record, when really it needs to be this. And then, sometimes you find magic where you might have a song. I mean, imagine like Johnny Cash doing that 9 Inch Nails song. I hurt myself today. What's that? I can't remember. It might be called Hurt.
Yeah, Hurt.
That's an example of finding a gem, and changing its character and it becoming amazing. So yeah, it goes both ways, but it's all just trial and error and experimenting, and having good talent and good brains in the room. And I'm not speaking of myself; I'm speaking of all the others around me. I'm very lucky to share all this experience with, and you find little bits of magic, and you just need patience, and you can, the benefits come from all of that. I was watching this Nick Cave, Warren Ellis doco, and it was kind of rung a bit true for me when Warren was doing all this like long soft pants synth stuff, and then Nick would come in and say, "No, I've got this song. It's got 3 chords, and it goes like this." And then Warren was kind of over songs, and he wanted these like soundscape experiences that Nick would sort of then speak almost over, rather than sing. And they would sit in a room for like 5 hours at a time whilst Warren would play all this soft pan synth, and Nick would try and find a way to put the lyrics and the song over the top of it. And Nick tells this story where he's just like, at one point I just stormed out and just said, I just can't fucking handle any more of this fucking synth. And so you just need to sort of let things germinate, and you can spend 2 days on something, and then someone goes, "You know what, this isn't working, let's scrap it." And then you go, "Yeah, okay, I'm with you on that, let's go." And then it's over. Because you need to be with people that will take an idea anywhere and not sort of shut it down before it's been tried and tested. But then at some point you need to go, this doesn't work, and then you move on.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like there are times where you can be experimenting with a song and trying to get it to fit different clothes, if you will, to use a odd metaphor. But sometimes that you do have to kind of rein that in and just have a bit of control with it. Ferg, I know, as we've discussed, that there is a huge year ahead for Kingswood, that with the new album Home coming out and a possible second album, as you mentioned, phase 2 of the tour to be announced. So usually I would ask what we can expect in the next 12 months from a band, but I think that's kind of covered what you guys have for a busy 2023. I guess, is there anything that you want to highlight to fans of the band or the podcast who are listening for anything that you think they should keep an eye out for this year from the band?
Well, I mean, I'd certainly love anyone to come along and be a part of this tour and come and see us. But I mean, I'm talking about Nick Cave again, but he's inspiring to me because he sort of puts art ahead of himself in a way, and he's had sort of recent griefs, for example, but he would let documentary crews come in and film his process even throughout that, because he thinks it's important to share that aspect of art. And so we are filming a documentary about the whole tour. Whether we blow up halfway through and it's all over, or we are triumphant, or whatever happens will happen. But we're gonna document the whole thing, and then hopefully it'll be good viewing, whether you like us or not. I think it'll be an interesting piece to show a band taking a big bold step and out of COVID doing something pretty out there.
100%. Well, I look forward to seeing that documentary when it does come out, when it's edited and available for people to view. So we will be keeping our eyes peeled for that, and we'll be promoting it on the podcast when it does come out. Usually we would ask our guests what they're currently listening to, but to wrap things up with yourself, I wanted to change it ever so slightly. As we mentioned, you're on the road for 70 plus dates. For yourself, what's maybe one or two best, we can say road trip songs, or we can say on the road or on tour songs that kind of get you through driving on the bus every day?
I think it's a good question, because there are songs that are very suited to driving, and particularly bus driving down the road. The first one that jumps out of my mind is like Lodi by Creedence Clearwater. So we've been listening to a lot of them. We're all sort of stooped in this world of, the Eagles and kind of 50s country. So maybe I'll go with an Eagles. Maybe I'll go with what's that one? Hang on, it'll come. Lion Eyes, or You Can't Hide Your Lion Eyes.
Oh yes, yep.
Yeah,
brilliant track. Yes, yeah.
Beautiful song.
Both very solid tracks.
yeah, that's it. That's our world at the moment.
Look, I can very much appreciate that. Ferg, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and congratulations again on the Hometowns tour, which is currently happening. We'll have all the dates in the show notes, and the upcoming release of Home, the new record from Kingswood.
Thank you very much, Simon. Appreciate it.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
I'm Kristen.
And I'm Jen from the I Mom So Hard podcast.
Now listen, we don't want to brag, but yes, we are moms. We're average moms.
Below average sometimes.
But we're not just moms.
Yeah, we don't want you to think that we're just moms. And we're not just supermodels either. We're not just pieces of meat,
That's right. We're not even close.
Yeah.
But we are comedians, and we're also best friends.
We're also best-selling authors.
And television writers.
And we created a viral web series.
With over 300 million views.
Okay,
What's
that's
up?
bragging.
Who's bragging? And we were in our swimsuits. Again, not supermodels.
We're also podcasters.
Are we podcasting right now?
Not right now, but we have been podcasting for 3 years. We're bringing laughs every Tuesday to women and moms everywhere.
And one dude who's a sophomore in college, his name's Greg, whatever, he messaged us and made me feel cool.
So nice. Amazing. Please listen to the I Mom So Hard podcast on Acast.
Woo!
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.